Let's talk about today the importance of an early head ultrasound when a baby has suffered the traumatic brain injury, HIE. I want to talk with you about this because I've been out of town for the last couple of weeks and I've had questions that have piled up while I was out of town, and I want to get to as many as I can. And I'm going to talk about the ones that kind of keep coming up. And this topic today about ultrasounds actually stems from a video that I did a while ago when I was talking about MRI and patterns when it comes to a baby that has suffered a traumatic brain injury like HIE. Now, before I get too deep into the head ultrasound and why it's important, I want to step back a little bit because I think it's important for you to understand how this process works in general when you are trying to figure out the cause of your baby's traumatic brain injury and HIE injury, and you are thinking about it from a medical legal standpoint. So that's really important. And that's the backdrop for today's discussion. First of all, we have to, we must have a theory if we're going to move forward against a doctor or a hospital or some nurses as it pertains to your baby's HIE injury. If it's your position that the doctors, the nurses, or the hospital, that they have caused this injury to your baby, then we have to be able to pin down a theory as to how did it happen. And when we're doing a birth injury investigation early on, we're looking at a lot of information to be able to have a good theory as to how this happened. You don't want to get all the way to the end. You don't want to file and start getting through discovery and all of this other stuff. And now all of a sudden your case is falling apart because you didn't do a really good job in the front end of investigating not only your theories but potential defenses or things that the other side can bring up, and whether your experts are going to have to concede some points that could be extremely detrimental to your case. So you want to make sure that you have a good idea as to what caused the injury. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and let's get deep into this issue of an early head ultrasound. In a lot of these cases, when you're going against a hospital from a medical legal standpoint, a lot of times what they're going to say is that if there was a departure from the standard of care, what they're going to say is that, okay, so that happened, but we didn't cause the injury. It didn't happen on our watch. It happened earlier in time, and we are not the fault. And if you cannot prove that the doctors and nurses in the hospital are actually, if that they are the ones, they departed from the standard of care causing the injury or the harm, you're not going to get too far in a medical malpractice or a birth injury claim. So here comes the head ultrasound. When an early head ultrasound is done, one of the things that it's going to be looking for is, for example, whether there was a brain bleed, whether there was a brain bleed or whether there was hemorrhaging going on. In that early ultrasound, and usually these are done within 24 hours if there has been a suspected brain injury of the child. If that early head ultrasound, if it comes back and there's problems on that initial head ultrasound, if they're showing things like bleeding or hemorrhaging, if that type of thing is there, then there's going to be a strong argument that's going to be made that this injury to your baby, that this happened early in time. There may have been a stroke in utero. This happened earlier in time, somewhere during the pregnancy, and now that injury has had enough time to manifest itself on the scans. So if you get a head ultrasound and that thing comes back and there's problems on the head ultrasound, then you got to really kind of step back and say, okay, is this something that was caused by birth trauma? And when I'm saying birth trauma, what I mean essentially is negligence on the part of the doctors, the nurses, and the hospital. Was this something that was caused by them? Or was there a stroke, or was there something that happened earlier in time which caused this baby to suffer this traumatic brain injury? So I hope that now at the conclusion of this video, you have a better understanding of all of, and this is just some of the pieces that we have to put together when a family contacts us to be able to figure out, okay, how did this happen? What caused this? Was this something that was caused by medical malpractice, which is what I touched on? Or was this something that happened because of genetic issues or developmental? Was this, like I said, a stroke or something that happened earlier in time? Was that the cause of your baby's traumatic brain injury? Knowing and understanding how we put these cases together, or areas where there's going to be scrutiny and concern, that will allow you to be able to make the best decision going forward for not only for your baby, but for your family. If you have more questions, maybe you're watching this video today because your baby has suffered a traumatic brain injury, has suffered an HIE injury, and you have questions as to the cause of it. Maybe you want to know, was it a stroke that occurred in utero, or was it something that the doctors, the nurses in the hospital, something that they did that caused the injury? And if they did cause it, your thinking is that, okay, they should be held responsible financially for causing this for my baby. If that is you, to try to get help in the future for medical care and all these other things that's going to happen in the future. If that's you, what I invite you to do is go ahead and get your cell and give me a call. There's a telephone number down below, and you can give us a call. You pick up get your cell and give us a call. When you contact my office, be sure to pick a date and a time to get on our calendar. That's important, a date and a time to be able to contact us. And in addition to that, make sure that you leave my office a good working email, an email address that you check frequently, because sometimes we have to reach out with email, and we want to make sure that we send it to an email that you are checking. One more thing before I get out of here. I practice law here in the state of Maryland, and I know from time to time I have individuals who will contact me. They are in the United States, but they're not in Maryland. If that is you, just understand that we have to use what we call co-counsel or local counsel. In other words, an attorney in your state. That's something that we can work to help you on, but I just want to make sure that you understand that local counsel or co-counsel aspect of things if you are not here in the state of Maryland. All right, that's going to be it for today's quick educational video. Again, I'm Marcus Boston, and I'm one of the childbirth injury and medical malpractice attorneys practicing law here in the state of Maryland at Boston Law Group, LLC. We'll talk with you next time. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.